Hello and welcome. My name is Mark Horseman, Data Evangelist with Dataversity. Today we're enjoying a special presentation from Prophecy called Guardrails to Go Faster, How Pipeline Governance Unlocks Data Access for Analysts. Just a couple of points to get us started. Due to the large number of people that attend these sessions, you will be muted during the webinar. If you would like to chat with us or with each other, we certainly encourage you to do so. And just to note, the Zoom chat defaults to send to just the panelists, but you may absolutely switch that to network with everyone. For questions, we'll be collecting them by the Q&A section. To find the chat or the Q&A panels, you'll see the icons for those features in the bottom middle of your screen. As always, we will send a follow-up email within a couple of business days containing links to the slides, a recording of this session, and any additional information requested throughout the webinar. Now, let me introduce to you our speakers, Matt, Brian, and Atai. Matt is the Director of Product Marketing at Prophecy. He works closely with customers and partners to speed data transformation and help everybody working with data to be more productive. Before joining Prophecy, Matt was the Director of Industry Strategy at data catalog provider Elation and the Chief Technology Officer for Media and Manufacturing at enterprise NoSQL provider MarkLogic. Matt has also been a strategic advisor to GitHub and many other software solution providers, a technology leader at Sony Music and PC World Online, and a published author on data and speaker at industry events. Brian is currently a senior solutions architect for Databricks, primarily covering the healthcare and life sciences vertical, and is also a part of the field team for the Databricks and SAP partnership. Prior to Databricks, Brian was an associate CTO for data engineering and analytics at SADA Systems, helping to lead their data strategy and helping customers unlock the value of their data on Google Cloud. He also held roles at Google Cloud, SAP, and Informatica, and loves to focus on the data space and is always looking to help customers innovate with the latest data technologies. Atai Weiss brings over 30 years of experience in information management and data architecture, helping organizations design and implement modern data solutions at scale. His career spans deep expertise in business intelligence, data modeling, ETL, and analytics, with a particular focus on driving business outcomes through data-driven decision-making. Prior to Prophecy, Atai spent 6 years at Databricks, working with a broad range of data technologies and leading data architecture initiatives across large enterprises in financial services and healthcare and life sciences. His work has consistently focused on enabling organizations to leverage data as a strategic asset, empowering business users with timely, trusted insights that drive operational efficiency, innovation, and competitive advantage. And with that, I will hand the floor over to the Prophecy team. Hello and welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much, Mark, for the warm introduction. And thank you all for joining. Got a really great crowd here. Just typing something out. Make sure, let's use the chat. Let's be interactive. I forgot to mention where I'm coming from. So I'm joining you guys from New York. And as Mark said, I am the Director of Product Marketing at Prophecy. So that's me. You'll hear a little bit more from me. But before we jump into slides, let's hear from everybody. So Brian, want to say hi to the folks after your August introduction. Let's bring it home with it's just a regular hello.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Matt, for that introduction. That was quite the thorough introduction, I must say, and I don't know what more to add to that. But just like Matt, I am also based out of New York City. I am currently a senior solutions architect with Databricks and happy to speak to you all. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, and thanks so much for joining us. And Itai, you want to say hello to the folks?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm based in Virginia Beach, and I'm happy to be here and show you how we can make it easier to have to do data manipulation for even business users or data engineers. And now back to you, Matt.
Yeah, and as you guys can tell, we're right into it. You've got 3 data experts. You're hosted by one of the data leaders, and you're at Dataversity. So guess what? We're going to talk about data. But certainly a couple things before we jump right in. Please do say hi in the chat. Where are you joining from? Go ahead and make comments there. We also, as Mark mentioned, the Q&A is very active, and we'll keep an eye on it. If we're covering something and you have a question, best thing for us to do is keep it interactive in that way, and we really, really welcome your input. And hopefully we're covering something that you're interested in. So just to start off, as Brian mentioned, this is brought to you by Prophecy. Prophecy is the data integration platform. We're here to help everyone working in data get to the trusted, clean, and timely data they need to, in these days, not just power new insights, power AI, and also move the business forward. Data is, as you know, critical to almost every operational system. And today, our problems in the data world have moved around a little bit. It used to be about getting the data together or getting it organized and then getting it out in these very sort of long pipelines. But as you hear from Brian, Databricks and other cloud platforms are moving the conversation forward in terms of being able to address the data, but there's still a critical gap. And Prophecy's here to help bridge the gap between having all the data and the smart people and systems and now agents and other systems that need to access data, bridge the gap between the data existing and the way that those systems and people need to access data specific to their use. And Prophecy's here to provide the most efficient way, which is the self-service, thinking about getting it out and bringing more people, getting data expertise, get data domain experts involved in these systems, which are quite complex, but really also thinking about the governance and really it's specifically thinking about the native governance that comes with cloud data platforms like Databricks. So this is what we're about. You can see kind of in the middle, our trademark is that with Prophecy, all data users can experience and understand how to transform data with visual while maintaining the governance and enterprise and engineering quality you need with code. And behind it all is kind of our core secret sauce, moving between these two modes and AI in a seamless application. Recently, we did a survey of data leaders to kind of take the temperature of what's going on as that equation that I just talked about, all the data we have and all the people that need to get access to it, is suddenly amped up with Gen AI. If you've somehow not been experiencing what I used to call what I've been calling the AI denial of service attack in your feed, then you may have missed it. But for most of us, it's been about AI. But for data people, it has a really interesting component to it. Yes, there's more demands with AI because people are suddenly there was a great report from Kevin Petrie, who talked about, said all eyes are on the data team now. He's at Bark now. But it's also a huge opportunity where AI can actually transform and maybe tackle some of those big problems we've all been working from. So I wanted to share a couple of the findings from that, and then we'll talk a little bit about where this goes. The first thing is that Gen AI is extremely real in terms of productivity. Now, I'm saying this now. We did the survey. We released it at the January, February of this year. And it was right around there, and the people were starting to go from, hey, the pilots and real and actually have things in production. And for us, it was an interesting stat. So, seeing these really big double-digit 31 to 50% productivity gains is what people are actually seeing. And so that meant that we did the survey at a time when enough Gen AI usage was in play and people were actually measuring and understanding its impact. But what's really interesting is that cohort were the ones that actually were using Gen AI. It was higher. The returns were actually higher than what people who weren't yet using it were expecting. They were down a couple of percentage. They were down sort of in the next tranche. And so, first of all, we're seeing results. They're real. And the second thing is that they were not translating those results into just efficiency and turning people off and thinking about ways to just simply streamline things. Data teams are turning those results into action, thinking about hiring more, skilling up, meeting the moment, because all of that efficiency, it actually just means that we can look at the fundamentals that have been holding back data. And it's really those fundamentals that have been holding back data that were listed out as top barriers for AI adoption. Data governance, faster access to data, those are the two top things that people listed when they were when we asked them what was holding you back. And so this kind of equation, and of course it's a full survey, there's a lot more detail in it, but this kind of equation paints an interesting picture for everybody working in data. We know that Gen AI is making an impact on the whole world and demand for data, but it makes an impact on our teams, meeting the moment, hiring more. But we're still working on the fundamentals. And just to kind of double click on those fundamentals, and as hopefully I'm doing enough foreshadowing here to let you know that's where we're going to go. One of the things we asked was where would people focus their efforts? What's the top processes that we think will see the most impact? And data transformation and preparation. that equation that I talked about in the front, that yes, the data is there, there's so many outcomes from it, and we really just need help with getting into it and helping generate and create the specific data sets that everybody needs to work on their projects, power the AI. So data transformation and preparation. Data quality is number two. That kind of matches the two things that the survey found. If I kind of back up, then when we looked at those two fundamentals, data governance and faster access to data, well, we're going to apply it into data preparation where we need faster access, and data quality where we need governance. And then clicking into data quality, you can see there's a lot of opportunity. Automatic data curation, conversational analytics, the kind of tool sets that we at Prophecy have been working on, that many in the industry have been working on. And that promise is out there for everybody to think about how to apply Gen AI. But I think we still have a long way to go. And we need kind of a roadmap to think about what comes next. So with that kind of introduction, thinking about this big picture about where the data is going, how to get it into the hands of everyone that needs it, I'm going to turn it over to Brian, because for us, working with Databricks is fundamental. As you learn more about Prophecy, you'll see that everything we do is native to Databricks and works on top of it. But it's also fundamental because if you want to get to these gains, if you want to think about being able to use Gen AI in all these different areas, well, you need to really think about the platform. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian to pick it up from there, talk a little bit about the promise of Gen AI, and take it away, Brian.
Absolutely. Let me just switch the screen share over.
Thanks.
Awesome. And just to continue on from what Matt was saying, I've been fortunate enough to have a career where I've been able to span a little bit of the different phases of analytics, where if I really think back to the time when we were all on appliances in the data center and everyone was trying to get analytics that were separated out from the transactional systems, everything was in a batch world, more or less, and we were looking backwards on our data and doing operational reporting. With the advent of cloud technologies and a lot of this forward-looking predictive analytics technologies that were coming in at the time after that, and then we fast forward to 2025 when the questions that we're asking are no longer in the context of what happened to my business, but rather what's going to happen to my business, or tell me what's happening with my business that I haven't asked for, be able to predict these things for me, analyze these things for me. What's really interesting in this moment in time for me when I look at the overall data space is the fact that even in analytics, everyone wants to be a data and an AI company on top of that. Business intelligence is no longer just sufficient enough to be able to say what's happening to my business now, but it has to be able to say, hey, I found this for you in your business without you even having to ask for it. And also, this is what I think is going to happen to your business. And that's really important because the way that we're fundamentally asking these questions is now shifting, and the user demands that we're looking at, especially if you think about in the consumer space in your own personal life, where the things that you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis, whether it's Google search, your personal finance tools, or anything that you interact with on your cell phone and on your browser, everything is moving to a very real-time, very on-demand and forward-looking basis. And what we're seeing is that expectation that we carry in our personal lives is also now going into our business and professional lives. And in that same vein, that's where the AI and the agentic frameworks and all this demand for forward-looking analytics and forward-looking predictions is really coming from. And we do, and even me personally, we all personally believe that the winners in the future competitive space are going to be those organizations and companies who are able to harness the future insights of their data that's currently locked in a bunch of different silos. And when we try to move towards this kind of environment, there are a lot of benefits that come from it, whether we're looking at organizational process benefits or we're looking at cost benefits. Across the board, the better that we get a handle on our data and the better that we can answer these questions in a scalable and more real-time way, the better off the entire organization typically is going to be. The challenge, however, is the fact that a lot of the headwinds that we face in trying to reach that kind of goal have not fundamentally changed since in the last couple decades. I think the technologies have changed. where those problems are being hosted have changed, but the core fundamental problems themselves are still fairly consistent if you look across time. What are those challenges? The data estate's always fragmented. Whether it's people shifting data sets onto Excel files, emailing them back and forth across the enterprise, whether it's in a different division just trying to siphon data off and starting to work with it in their own environments, or whatever that is, even if it's locked in a different technology, different database, different platform, different cloud or on premises or on a laptop, the amount of data that has to be managed is increasingly complex with the more tools and the more data platforms and the more integration tools that are introduced. You have different code bases, different file types, different data types, and the permutations and combinations of this problem are immense the more complex your organization gets. Not to mention your security perimeter is increasingly widened, the risk of data exfiltration becomes greater, and overall just the management in terms of money and time and people is incredibly high. And what's really been interesting, at least for me to see, is when we're looking at the promise of about 5 to 10 years ago, the promise of self-service analytics, self-service BI, and self-service everything. For a long time, you've probably seen that sales pitch across different vendors that you work with. And for roughly about a decade, we saw the pendulum shift from on-premises applications over into new cloud-based tooling or self-service tooling where everyone kind of had free reign to everything. That actually, in retrospect, when we talk to organizations and we talk to customers, it turns out that that actually backfired a little bit, because what that really meant is that the governance challenges became compounded when anybody was able to take a corporate card, swipe it on a cloud provider, and then boom, you have another data repository, another technology you have to manage, and another data set that's going to be floating out there. And in it, the security perimeter becomes brought in, but also just who has access to the data becomes incredibly complex. Trying to get a handle on where people are able to calculate things or where they're able to copy data or try to access data. All these things from a governance perspective becomes incredibly complicated because in addition to the multiple copies of data you now have to secure and govern the different integration points, the different metadata catalogs, the different data platforms, cloud platforms, so on and so forth. And so when trying to get a holistic view on your overall data estate and your data integration and pipeline estate, it's incredibly difficult for organizations to get a handle on. What does that lead to? It leads to organizations increasingly wanting to become an AI-driven organization where the business is demanding that these kinds of capabilities be implemented, but we're still struggling to get a handle on the data, try to get quality data, traceable data, and easy access to the data in a secure and governed manner that fulfills the requirements of these AI-based initiatives that are going on within the enterprise. And we're finding that a lot of times, these initiatives never make it to production. And what we want to do is move to a paradigm where your data platform becomes an intelligent platform, and it's able to consist of one single place where all your data is managed, governed, interoperable, and you can interface with it in many different ways. And with Databricks, that's what we refer to as a data intelligence platform, where we want to be able to take AI-based decisions, be able to have one central governed data estate, which is managed through what we call Unity Catalog that controls all the metadata and role-based access and governance and all that security that you demand, but you have it on top of a data lake. And that gives you the flexibility of a data lake, being able to have different types of data, different formats, all at different velocities, yet still have a single place where all those different disparate types of data can be managed and secured, and also has different interfaces for data scientists, data engineers, and data analysts, all to be able to come to one single platform to interact with, govern, and access data. And here at Databricks, this is the direction that we hope people start to see, that when you have a singular platform like this, a lot of the different technology challenges that I was just mentioning earlier start to become less burden on your side. because now you're not reaching out to different sources. You're not reaching out to different platforms. You now have a single place that is cross-cloud, multi-platform that you can now have everyone go to that is secure, governed, and accessible. One of the core things about this, though, is to make the different capabilities extend out into the different personas that are required across the business. And if you're familiar at all with Databricks, typically you're going to know that we operate heavily on Python and on SQL. And we also have different dashboards for analysts and different predictive capabilities and AI and ML features on the platform. But one of the key things that we partner with Prophecy on is to have easy environments in which you can integrate with Databricks in order to bring the data pipelines into the platform. We view Prophecy as a key partner in this space to be able to lower the barrier of entry to get your data and unlock your data repositories to leverage the Databricks platform, all in a seamless, secure, and governed manner from data inception all the way to data analysis and prediction. So that, in a nutshell, is the data intelligence platform and the value that we bring to the table, and also a little bit of a glimpse into the joint value proposition that Databricks brings in addition with Prophecy. And with that, I want to flip it over back to the Prophecy folks to do a little bit more deep dive into that platform.
Terrific. Thanks, Brian. And thanks for sharing not just the approach, but some of the real challenges that people have been facing as they go from fragmented use back. Before we just switch off, I want to see if, first of all, anybody had any specific questions for you. But you mentioned that you mentioned the kind of compounding of the risks or the fragmentation. And I know you work hands-on with a lot of really great organizations. Maybe somebody you could mention or maybe not. But is there one of the engagements you think of, or can you kind of bring it home a little bit with some of the customers that you've been able to help navigate this and start moving in the right direction?
Yeah, there are a number of customers I work with when we look at both on-premises and cloud technologies. So a lot of the typical vendors that you see in appliance-based analytics platforms that various companies are either starting to de-emphasize or remove support down the line. Depending on what industry you're in, and again, in my introduction mentioned that I was in the healthcare industry, which is highly regulated, and changes don't happen as easily because there is such a big spotlight on compliance. There are a lot of organizations still on their cloud modernization journey, especially when it comes to their analytics platforms. And so in this space, we're starting to notice a lot of customers who are saying, I have all these different technologies and different data centers all across the country, as well as some different groups who have started down the AWS or Azure or GCP path. How do I rationalize this and how do I bring this all in? There are a number of different challenges that are primarily engineering wise in terms of how do I get the networking set up? How do I get cross-cloud communication? The list goes on and on and on. But I think one of the more important things that doesn't get as much of a spotlight, which I think it should though, is around the change management portion of it. So if you have, and I'm going to draw on Informatica just because I personally used to be an Informatica developer myself, but if you have, when we were introducing the Databricks platform and you had people like me who were former Informatica developers who like easy to use drag and drop interfaces to be able to achieve in order to solve complex data integration problems, where do I fit in a Python world, in a heavily scripted world? And that, again, is where we make partnerships such as companies like Prophecy right here, because it makes that translation and that gap in the change management process a lot easier, where someone like me can look at this and say, oh, I know exactly where to go. I know what I'm doing. And by the fact that we can now convert these mappings into Python code that runs underneath the hood that's optimized for the Databricks platform, these are some of the things that customers are very keen to learn about, because it de-risks the migration and the integration, and it speeds the time to value and time to insight in performing these migrations.
Yeah, and it's so important to think about those workloads, those workflows, which very business specific, but not connected. I mean, I really like the point you made about that proliferation of silos and disparate systems, which was enabled by which was developed and delivering self-service, but ultimately the kind of costs have caught up with us. And we're very happy to be part of this newer approach to really leverage the stack as it is. It's kind of age-old thing, right? Don't move the data, move everything to the data. And if the data is in Databricks, let's use everything that's there.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, I think I'm gonna keep on going just on that thought, because exactly that's where we kind of pick up the story. I know I just want to encourage you guys to keep on with not just comments but questions. And there is a comment. I'm gonna launch into it, but it's from Michael, and I kind of feel like we need a clarification. What does the addition of generative AI provide to this process, or what's been accomplished that couldn't have been done without generative AI? I'm actually, you know what? I'm actually going to park that. And maybe Michael, you could go a little bit more, because I think we're going to come back to it. But I do want to just say that that's good foreshadowing. And the reason I'm saying parking it is because we're talking about which part of which process. So let me take back the screen and we will launch into the next phase of what we're up to. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. All right, Zoom, please share. Good job. Okay, nope, that's the wrong share. Sorry, guys. Ugh, all right, fine. Nope, that's the wrong share. Perils of using slideshow. You end up with a window that's orphaned. All right, here, let's do it again. All right, there we go. Okay, everybody should be seeing where we are. So like I said, we're going to pick up the story. We'll come back to the chat and to the questions. And please do keep up with the questions. But I want to pick up from where Brian left us. We were talking, and I thought kind of just go back to a slightly different view on that same picture, which is disparate systems, which are natural. There's speed of business is going to continue. We're actually going out a little bit further into the application space, where we know there are lots of different systems. So Brian took us into what happens when we diversify within the analytics space, but just writ large, we're all trying to really achieve these goals. Clean, trusted data, it's fueling analytics. We know that overall, it's what powers success of companies. Brian articulated that very well about the need that the tapping the future insights that are in your data is key for success. Gartner agrees, it's tied to revenue. We agree. Our survey was talking about the impact that Gen AI will have on these companies. And all of it takes people working inside the organization to ingest, clean, filter, and aggregate data and deliver that clean, trusted data. And these are our folks, and these are your folks, and these are us. This is what we're really focused on. And for many years, and as Brian said, there's been a legacy of different approaches in the middle, but with this advent, with the idea of a central Databricks platform, we're seeing organizations struggle with a couple of different angles of this. The first angle is talking a little bit about what Brian said, where in cloud data platform, there is a high degree of engineering that's happening. So rolling back from some of our customers who've gone from spreadsheets to some of the all-in-one Informatica Alteryx type platforms and moving to the data cloud, with that power of centralization, with that governance, also does come complexity. And a lot of that load is landing on data engineers to do not just the structural formatting and the structural work to bring the data warehouse, the new version of the data warehouse, into order, but to actually be there to develop all the pipelines. And this back and forth where data analysts aren't hands-on is something that's really been a drag for many of our customers. Instead of being able to get right into it, data analysts write requirements. We've sort of formalized the process. Requirements get executed, get tested. We forgot something. And these back and forth loops that for many of our customers, we had one in the pharmaceutical industry that was talking about this being a 30, 40 step process to just do a simple pipeline. because of so many back and forths in the testing cycle. Same thing for one of our biggest financial service customers. What they were looking at is a skills gap. Every time they went into testing, data engineering, the engineers had to do new revs, deploy it out to a testing platform, and all of that drag is leading us into the situation where at the very time that we need the most access to data, we've got a system that's promoting this lag. And everybody ends up, the data engineers end up oversubscribed, and they can't get to the real systemic things they're working on because they're just simply adding and working on features. And analysts that need the data are blocked waiting for critical data. It's an equation we've heard over and over again, and something we're ready to jump into. But it's interesting because it's also matched by the other approach, which is if you go and just try to break through that by enabling self-service, but not enabling self-service in a cloud data platform aware way, you end up with, as Brian was talking about, these multiple copies, disparate systems. And this has its own drawback. Yes, you can get to direct answers, analysts can self-serve, but you're now incurring big risks in terms of cost. There's not just in terms of platform and processing costs, but engineering rework. So many of these pipelines end up becoming mission critical and end up having to be redone. There's data quality as a prime example of when you have disparate systems, are we using the right data? They're not leveraging things like Unity Catalog. You're simply leveraging the data you have your hands on. And then as Brian talked about, the security envelope, I think fragmented is sort of an understatement. You're really looking at policy, not enforcement, not systemic enforcement, that can lead to all kinds of issues, especially as more and more data becomes available and everybody needs their own copy. This is why I'm really, really aligning where Brian took us. This is why our focus at Prophecy is about that self-service, but with the governance, the native Databricks governance that you need. And by, just sort of speaking plainly, not messing up that governance, we're really able to help people, help all the teams get access to the platform. So visual AI-enabled interfaces, Itai will show what that looks like. That's how everybody can do the work, but it's based on this sound foundation. And in our model, this is allowing the data engineers to do the foundational work, get things set up, and enable self-service for the data analysts. And this kind of teaming back and forth has been critical for our customers. It's, just to take a quick example from Drew over at Amgen. Drew and his team, this is the financial insights team at Amgen, and Drew and his team went on this journey. I'm actually showing the second step, but the first step was marshaling spreadsheets. And before anybody thinks, well, that must have been a long time ago, this is still 5-6 years ago. And this is very common. Marshalling spreadsheets. Well, the second step was going from that, but into that all-in-one self-service environment, and then tooling around it to try to overcome all of those issues. Manual security processes, dedicated systems that were not enforcing data quality, so that everything had to be redone and remonitored. And then some of the other things he's talking about there, cost and scaling, that has to do with these individual systems not being linked up. Picture what Brian was talking about with multiple systems and multiple data centers, and put that even into a microcosm with a relatively small team that was still really suffering from disjointed systems. Their move to Databricks was the first big move, but then that got into the back and forth, and very quickly they were able to think about Prophecy, think about delivering the self-service. So going in the direction that everybody wants to go, the users wanted to go. That's why they went into the Alteryx direction, but going into that direction with self-service, but on top of and natively using the Databricks platform for the security, for the governance, and most importantly, for the processing, scaling, and efficiency that allowed them to now not just cut pipeline times, but deliver out the actual data faster. So Drew was nice enough to participate, share what he's learning. And with Prophecy, we're able to fully leverage cloud data platform, speed pipeline development, and improve collaboration. And I kind of haven't hit on that as much. Self-service is not just about going it alone. Self-service means that everybody can understand the work. And what we found over and over again is when we raise that level of understanding pipelines, getting them into an environment people can understand, then, and this is just a quick look at our platform, then everybody can pick up each other's work and can not only work in the same platform, but collaborate. So that's what Prophecy is about. We're a single canvas to allow data transformation, get into that critical function, and put AI in place, let people navigate and make use of it. And I think this is maybe where I want to tee up. I'm going to take a quick pause and come back to that question. So Michael's question was, what did the addition of generative AI provide to this process? What could be accomplished that couldn't be before? And you're seeing it. This isn't code generation. This is looking at the context of your data and use with generative AI, beginning to, in this very quick demo, and you'll see much more from Itai, actually generate the kind of development for the pipeline that ultimately leads you to your answers. So I'm not sure if I nailed the question, Michael. Please keep coming back with comments if we're not there. And you'll see more as I hand things over to Itai.
Thanks, Matt. Now let's find my share button.
Yeah, exactly.
Should be set.
Fantastic.
So,
all right. Well, thanks. We've teed up a lot, Itai. I don't want you to be, you have Brian on the platform. You have me promising this nirvana of self-service. So, expectations are high.
thanks, Matt. I agree. Expectations are high. And in a way, I would say Prophecy really brings up the best from the data platform that Brian talks about and the other ETL pipeline generators that we all familiar with and know, such as Informatica, Alteryx, DataStage, and other. But Prophecy really brings both of them together and then add the Copilot version that we just start to see. And I'm going to demo it for you as well. So in the Prophecy, when you just start, you can see a lot of your recent pipelines. You can look at like the pipelines you have, the data sets. You can look at the team, everything around the collaboration that you can work together. And let's jump in and start to look into one of the projects. So in many cases, the administrator, the same data administrators that set up your Databricks environment will set up your Fabric. Fabric is your execution layer. And you can see here that, for example, in this project, I'm using SQL as a generated language, and this will run on top of Databricks. There's also some more context that I can add later on. I already have some contents that are already provisioned to me, like a macro and a sources and other. But this is a place where, as a business user, I can explain what this project is all about, what kind of data sources it will work on, what data sets are in, what are the terminology and the formulas that we're going to exercise, anything that will help anyone that is not familiar with the project to start and work on it. In the content, and that's where we're going to add soon more, we're going to build the different data sets we're going to use, the pipeline, so it's very easy to come in and see the project-specific content. And then, of course, there is a code, there is the access, and some settings around it. But let's dive into the business. We can create the pipelines and we can create an apps. Application is a way for a user to provide more UI interface to interact with the data. But all about it is starting with ingestion and getting the data built and prepared for us. We're going to go through a very simple example, really looking at a customer and order information and generate a top 25 report of the customers that orders the most. This can be later on used in an email, in a Tableau, and in other places as we can see it. So the name of the pipeline will be customer top 25, very original. And the first thing I need to do is go and look for data. So as I'm going through data, right in here, I can find my data that is available to me in the Databricks Unity catalog. That's the same governance layer that Brian mentioned. And more important to say, the data will be processed and run inside Databricks. So anything, every action I take here or every query we'll see will be run on Databricks, and the data will not move out of there. So it's all audited and governed in one simple location where everyone can understand who touched which data and when. I just brought in two tables. One is a customer and one is the order. Let's just look at the customer for a second. As I pulled it in, Prophecy automatically populated a table property, then listed the location. I can very quickly see what are the columns that I have and what are the types. But as you can see here, I'm missing my metadata. And I can quickly use our Copilot to fill up the metadata, which gives a quick description for what are these fields and what is a table description. This looks good enough for now. But then really, what is the true data? After all, any data ingestion, any data processing has to deal with the real data, not only the metadata. And a quick query on Databricks shows me the customer ID, the first name and last name. Interesting, there's no full name in here. Maybe I would like to use it later. Some more private information, country code, and some flags that we can potentially use later on. Good enough, I have a basic understanding of the data. I can move on and I can start and figure out what do I want to do here. So I have two tables. Natively, I'll use a join, and we have different options of join, just like in PySpark or SQL. But really all I need to do is just join both of them. And with a quick drag and drop that any user can do, we're basically opening up and now we're defining the join between the two different input to the pipeline. This is going to join them together. And here I have a UI that can guide me through it, and I can find the customer ID. I can decide that this will be an equal. Other options are less than, equal there, between. A good example for between will be a date range when I would like to join between them. In this case, n equals will be enough for me. And then I'll choose the other input stream and now the customer ID. I can decide whether it's an inner join, left outer join, and the visual in here really makes it easier for me to understand what kind of response will I get. Now, join is fine, but what is the information I'm going to get in here? So I'm going to select all the columns from the customers, just to make it easier, and then all the columns from the orders. Immediately, Prophecy says, hey, you have a duplicate customer ID, which is actually usually happens when you do a join in PySpark or Scala, and not that easy to find out. Now, yes, I can go and click and remove one of them, but at the same time, the AI is here to help, and it can find out and just remove one of the duplicates. It relies on the fact that this is my join criteria, so it knows that it's going to be the same data, whether it's coming from one input or the other. Great, I think this is good enough. Now, let's see what I can do next. I have a pre-generated prompt, and this will be the output from the join, and let's go over it. So I'm asking the AI to generate total sales and order count by full name. Remember, we had only a first name and last name, so we'll have to figure out how to get to the full name. And then show me the top 25 customers by total sales, and reformat total sales to 2 decimal places, like any human being will do. Note that we didn't even instruct it what will be the right order of operations. And yes, it has to do it the right way, right? First sort, then limit, otherwise the results will be wrong. Just like with any other Copilot, we would like to validate and test the data. So at the first, what I'll do is just go in here, and here's the answer for the full name. Basically, it concatenates first name and last name. You can see that that's almost like an Excel formula. Any business user will be familiar with it, and any data engineer can quickly create it and show it to them so they will know that they can trust this formula. It also dragged the amount and order ID, as we ask it to count the order IDs and have the amount, and it left a lot of the columns behind. This actually works pretty good so far. Now let's look at the aggregation. The aggregation will be by full name, exactly like we asked for. Yes, we will carry it over, and then we'll do a summarize on the amount, a count on the order, and that's all we need. Interesting to find out that it didn't do the formatting of the amount yet, which means that we're not going to lose any decimal points after the second. The format itself is only coming out here after the aggregation, as it should be. And here we have the full name, the round of the amount, and the count of the orders. You can see here that this gem, that's how we call each and every one of these phases, is actually doing a sort, and this will do a descending sort. And the last one will be like a limit 25 that brings up the top 25. Looks pretty good, but how do I know if it works? So very quickly, I can just run it from here. Prophecy will connect to the Databricks instance that is associated up here, run the query, and start and populate simple data previews for me along the line. So here we can see the same data that we've seen in the customer table. And then we quickly see an error, which is interesting because just like any other demos, it didn't happen before. Let's try and figure out where's the data, where the error comes from. Oh, that's just a small refresh. Just give it 1 second. Let's refresh the page. This will regenerate the code behind it. And this should be working right now. So again, I can see the data previews as it come in through it and through each and every one of the jobs. So here is a join, the customer data on the left, the order data on the right. And you can see here that this is before the data manipulation of the standardization of the amount or the count. Here is the data after the count and the round off the amount to the decimal places. Everything works slower on the demo. Really slow on the demo. Just move on. Let's look at the report at the end. And right here, I have a report that shows the full name, total sales, and order. You can see here that I have 25 records. Now, what do I do with this data? I can send it in an email. I can edit it as a Tableau file. I can drop it back into Databricks as a table. Really depends of what I need to do. I can keep manipulating with other options or send it to other services as I need. Now, this is all good, but so far it's still development mode. How do I save it and how do I store it in a way that this really, like Prophecy do, stored in an open source language, either a DBT model in SQL or PySpark or Scala, and shared with the entire team. Keep in mind, business users usually don't like to hear words like git repo and push and pull and commit, and it really doesn't make any sense to them. So we simplify to them. The AI automatically added description, which is not that close, not that far away from the ones that we showed it, and then what entities it will be committed. Now, if I'm a data engineer, I can click on this switch, and now I can see all the different files, like markdowns, JSON, and SQL files that will be committed for me. Then I can just do a save here, and this will save it into the Git repo. For me, as a user, I don't even have to see it. As a data engineer, I'm really interested to see what's going on behind the scene. So this is one of the files, but really the majority of the logic is coming here in the SQL file when we're doing a select from the two tables. Here is a join we defined, and here is a concatenation, summarize and count, round, and the limit 25 at the end. So really very easy for the data engineer to look at the code that has been generated, maybe optimize it if needed, but at the same time for the data analyst to understand and even manipulate this flow and generate the data or the insights that they're looking for. That's really the simple demo that covers most of it. Again, just to emphasize, everything that we ran was governed by the Databricks Unity catalog. The UI is here to help and open up the data manipulation, data transformation for the business users, giving them the control for the data ingestion and the data manipulations to implement their business rule, with no need to go back and forth with language translation between them and the data engineers. And the trusted copilot is here to help us do the data manipulation. It is focusing on implementing and driving these simple data pipelines, simple for the user, to create better insights. With this in mind, let's go back and start to look at your questions and answers and see what other things you have in mind.
Yep, I think we are set to dive into some questions. Mark, if you wanted to, you've
Yeah,
been watching what's been going on. Maybe you can take us through
sure.
a couple questions.
Our audience is perplexed a little bit, and I think Atai, you kind of got into this. Who is the intended audience for the prophecy tool? Is it like moving the ETL sort of activity to the analyst, or is it intended for a data engineer? Just based on what you were showing, I would think both. But what are your guys' thoughts on that?
So, Mark, that's actually a perfect question. I would say the data practitioners teams as a whole are users for
Hmm.
it. All of us today are using LLMs, right? ChatGPT, Claude, Google Gemini, everyone to generate the boilerplate code that all of us used to code for so long. Myself added a lot of typos in here and then had to debug them, but really covers the basics that none of us wants to type anymore. This is really where prophecy comes in both sides. One is pre-generating the code for you so you don't have to worry about it and it's trusted, but also showing you the pipeline in a big picture so you can very easily understand the business logic. I'm reading two tables, I'm doing some transformation, here is an aggregation, another order, and I'm done. Very easy to grasp the big picture and then dive into the detail as you need to troubleshoot or expand it. So really, to answer the question, I would say all data practitioners are looking into it. And I'm hearing more and more from our customers where basically they're looking forward to find a way to migrate Databricks notebooks into Prophecy and open it up to the users so it's easier for them to take control and manage it.
Nice.
Yeah, and I just wanted
We
to
have
add one more comment to that progression, where if you think about the way that Brian was talking about adoption, we've got Databricks, we're really adopting it, but it's kind of swung things to it's swung things into a very engineering focused role. And a lot of what we continually hear, and actually there was another part of our survey, people talking about what's one of the things holding you back, and it's finding skilled data engineers. And so we're thinking about the data engineering role and enabling the data engineering role to be doing that structural setup, creating the environment. And that's part of what Prophecy helps them do, is create the environment, shared components, but delivering that to now, instead of the data engineers having to do all the work, picking up all the tickets, editing every pipeline, bringing the domain experts, which often are the analysts, into the process. And so the kind of direct answer to that question is it's intended for the data teams that are Prophecy number one, the kind of where our customer is aligned, is intended for the data teams to use to transform or liberate or change what the data engineering backlog, address the data engineering backlog, and then deliver self-service to the analysts. Who are our users? That means our users are both cohorts, but we're thinking about it not in terms of saying, hey, analysts, go crazy. We're thinking about it, hey, we need to deliver to the analyst this environment. Someone was asking about governed. We need to deliver to an analyst an environment that is governed, that leverages the native governance that Databricks provides, but is set up by the data engineering team, but still allows them the freedom to have the self-service.
I like how you use the word liberate there, Matt. That's that's very telling. Liberate our data.
Yeah, well, and I mean, this is all about moving to what's the next big problem. If data engineers can stop, having to fix one of the things you hear about is not just the creation of pipelines, but the maintenance of them. Every time something breaks, you have to get one of your most highly valued resources onto the project. And Prophecy is part of self-service is allowing other people to understand it and pick it up and rapidly be able to fix them without having to go all the way back to that high cost and high skill resource.
That might be a wonderful segue into this next question that we've got in chat here. How can we manage or clean up data when working with multiple data pipelines from various sources which have common data elements? Can the AI and Prophecy assist with data cleansing before bringing the data into Databricks? And Atai, I think you showed that a little bit.
Yes, we dived only to some parts of the Prophecy workspace, but there's so much more. One of the options is, first of all, not only to see the data grid, but also to profile the data within the data grid. So I can identify very quickly the distribution of my data and what data cleansing I need to do. And yes, that's a great leading question. Prophecy has our own data cleansing solution for end users, and this is based on a lot of the data practice that we all bring into the table. So very easy to clean the data from, for example, from a lot of white space, right? Or other common like hyphens and dashes and others. And other data cleansing rules that really helps the user work on the data, on a clean data, and see the results. Important to mention that we made it easy for the end user to do it. So it's much more closer to the way that he'll be working in an Excel or one of his favorite tools, and he doesn't really have to dive into the code and start and create if and else and case scenarios just to manipulate and clean the data that they have.
I do think it's worth, Brian, maybe you weighing in on this, because one of the things we do talk about is we're not doing ETL. We are doing ELT, load the data, process it in Databricks. So cleaning the data before it hits Databricks may or may not, and Brian, I'm happy to, you can tap your knowledge. That may not be the approach. It may be the approach of, and there was another question about bronze, silver, gold layers and that approach. It's much more what we've really been able to do is help people get that raw data into the silver, more usable formats versus trying to catch it on the way in. And that's a big shift that you can think about when you get to Databricks and the ability for that platform to address so much data. I don't know if Brian, if you wanted to add on to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so if I'm thinking about cloud computing storage platforms in general, I think one of the shifts that we've seen that Databricks is one of the pioneers of is this idea of separating the storage and compute. And that really allows us to uh, decouple, if I'm thinking back to the old database, single instance database node kind of world, and I think about what we're looking at today, it allows the compute and the storage to scale independently of each other. But also one of the other things I think you were alluding to is the fact that we don't have to remove the data into a different system to accomplish a different task. So when we're thinking about data cleansing on the inbound, or we're thinking about how to how to create the different layers of the medallion architecture using a platform like Prophecy, for instance, we can still, because of this decoupling, we can operate on that same set of data and not have to duplicate it. So whether it's coming in or you're operating on a different medallion level, it's still going to be the same copy of data, and which helps with the governance aspect and the speed to value, and the benefits trickle everywhere for sure.
Yeah.
Do have a couple more questions in Q&A here, and this might be an interesting question. Usually I don't ask this type of question, but who's the competitor to Prophecy in the space? I've just seen so much uniqueness to what you guys are showing here that that strikes me as more interesting than it usually is.
Yeah, it is. It is is it Pepsi to Coke or Pepsi to water? That's one way of thinking about the competitor space. There's a lot of Pepsi to water here. And that's because there's a lot of legacy ETL out there. So systems that did take the data out and do the processing and allow for self-service, but weren't leveraging the cloud. And then there's also a lot of cloud code enablement. Oh, we're going to make it better in copilots and frameworks. And we really are in a spot where we've combined and looking at a space that is different, an approach that's out there to deliver the self-service but fully leverage the cloud. And so it's actually a really important thing when considering when you're looking at the space, and that's why we kind of have to walk through some of these definitions, because people may not be familiar that this is possible, that it is possible to bring that familiar self-service forward, fully leverage the cloud. It's also, in answering that question and talking about it, a lot of the platforms that have been delivering self-service are moving, or they're looking like that space, but what they're not doing is natively building it from the ground up in the way that we really thought about it. And it's actually something that we do where we help people bring those workloads over. So Itai mentioned notebooks coming over. They're also thinking from that competitor space, bringing those workloads over, because I think, Brian really teed it out. It's sort of inexorable that once you realize how much benefit there is and in a Databricks and really being able to leverage that data, you really want to take advantage of it, not move stuff out just, for here and there.
We have just 3 more seconds, a segue to this other question here. Is this really ending or augmenting the ETL developer role?
I would say it's augmenting and supercharging it. In fact, one of our customers, the guys at Marks and Spencer, they talk about AI supercharging their data engineering. And I just want to also mention, there's been some great conversations in the chat about what AI should do and how, whether we should. And I really just want to say that our entire approach is grounded in the governed data and the Unity catalog. Our knowledge graph is talking about learning your data and then leveraging that forward. That work all has to be done. But if we can speed up that work, if we can AI supercharge that work for the people who are hands-on, then maybe there'll be those cycles. And in fact, we know there'll be those cycles to spread out, really think about not just the making more pipelines and making the whole system more productive. So we really think it's, and that's what we've discovered from our customers. They are really, really pleased that their pipelines go from taking 40 steps to 9 steps, not because they want to get rid of people, because they have so much more work to do. And that's what we found in our survey with Gen AI. It's really promoting and causing so much more interest in the data team. So this is the moment where we have this unique double. Gen AI causing more interest and requirements, and Gen AI really being able to help with solving the problems.
Well, gentlemen, any parting thoughts before we wrap up for the day?
So I'm gonna give everybody a quick parting thought. We're about Databricks. So just if you are in the data world and you don't know about the Databricks Summit, you should. If you're considering going, please let us know. We are very active there. We're an Icon sponsor. We've got some great content. What you just saw, we're actually taking the next step with AI agents. So we're going to debut that at the event. We host a great party that can be a little oversubscribed, so you'll want to get in early. And we're doing things like booth chats, serving folks. Mark, you're not on this year's agenda, but folks like Sanjeev and Sanjeev Mohan and other industry folks coming and talking at our booth. So have a shout out if you're in the neighborhood. And Brian and Itai, if you want to say a little final word of thanks, I think we're good.
I think I'm good as well. Just hope this was helpful for everyone, and definitely appreciate the time you've given us. I know everyone's busy, so just wanna make sure you get some value out of it. So thank you again, everybody.
Yep, same here. I hope we gave you enough information to think through and figure out what will be the next steps for you and your data practitioner team. And looking forward
thanks
to
for all the
meeting you.
interaction. Thanks for all the interaction and questions.
Awesome. Well, everybody have a wonderful
And Mark,
rest of
thank
the
you
day.
for hosting us.
You're most welcome. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day, everybody.